right, everybody, welcome in. It is the Kinner and Kev Show, Dayton's ESPN Radio, 1410 Wing AM. We are off and rolling here on a Tuesday. I'm Justin Kinner. He's Kev Nash. Mr. Kev Nash, welcome.
What up, though?
Off and rolling again. Hot as hell outside, and you always wearing a hoodie.
It's freezing in the building.
Pants. That is one thing, yeah, when people bring up, they'll be, man, Kev, he's always wearing a hoodie or something. I'm like, you guys don't understand. At times, like, we'll have like books or just whatever, just anything to cover this back here. But we can't be picky because the last time we complained it was too cold.
Right.
Then he went and messed with it, and then it just stopped working altogether. I was like, you know what? Solutions, not problems.
It's not freezing in here. It's Arctic.
So there you go. But we welcome you in again. Kinner and Kev Show, Dayton's ESPN Radio, 1410 Wing AM. Ton to get into here today. Yes, people are still trying to figure out. Wait, I heard Kinner earlier. Yeah, I'm on from 1 to 3, hosting Off the Bench, and then co-hosting this with Mr. Kev Nash.
What up, though?
Kinner and Kev Show. So, yes, that's what's going on. I saw someone ask what's going on here. That's what's going on. As far as that's concerned.
You're a busy guy, man.
Hey, it's Roe. We haven't heard from Roe in a long time.
What's up, man?
He said, what up, fellas? Roe always disappears for the non-football season. And then he shows up, with he does the lanyards for every team that the Bengals beat. It was a little bare in the month of September last year, but it started filling up throughout. That was our big joke, throughout. But Ryan Strong says, I just got done listening to this guy, man. My ears hurt. What's up, guys? So there you go.
You're popular, man. You're popular. They can't get enough of Kinner.
Ryan Strong. We'll see if the ratings will say that.
Ratings.
We'll see. We'll see. A lot to get into. We got some NBA stuff coming up around the corner. Donovan Mitchell finally signs the extension with the Cleveland Cavaliers. We have that coming up here for you around the corner. But I wanted to open up a little college football talk. The reason is because, we've talked a lot of baseball. We've talked a lot of NBA. And it's like, this is probably the longest stretch without football that you and I have gone as far as on the show. I don't think we've ever gone this long without talking football in some capacity. Trying to mix it up a bit. But yeah, I can't. I'm having withdrawals. So we're going to talk about college football as far as that's concerned. So a couple weeks ago, or no, last week, geez, I guess it was only just last week. But last week, On3 put out, with USC and Oregon now being new members of the Big Ten, USC's record against the Big Ten. And it went down, it showed USC's record against each individual team, and some were surprising, others weren't nonetheless. But they just did the same thing with Oregon as we get to know some of the new teams in the Big Ten as far as that's concerned. And Kev, I'm curious what you know and don't know about Oregon and the success or lack thereof, if that's the case, that they've had against teams in the Big Ten. So let's take a look at Oregon's football all-time record against Big Ten teams, shall we? Let's start with Iowa. How many times have Oregon and Iowa played, and what do you think their record against the Hawkeyes is?
Okay, so I can only imagine that they played in the Rose Bowl a handful of times. Iowa was good in the 80s. I'm not sure what Oregon was doing in the 80s, so I'm going to say they played 4 times.
So they have played 3 times.
Okay.
And again, this doesn't break down like the dates of when they played or anything like that. They've played 3 times. But they have a 1-game advantage over the Hawkeyes, a 2-1 all-time record against Iowa in their head-to-heads. Now, Big Ten conference members, as far as that's concerned.
Big Ten rivals.
Rivals. There you go. What about Nebraska? Oregon, Nebraska.
Ooh, that's a good one because Nebraska has yet to win the Big Ten title, so they wouldn't have never played in the Rose Bowl. Nebraska was in the Big 12/Big 8 when Oregon was in the Pac-12/Pac-10. I'm going to go, they've only played in maybe like the Alamo Bowl or something like that. So I'm going to go, they played them twice.
So they have played them more than I even thought. 8 times.
Really?
They have played 8 times, and Oregon is 2-6 all time against Nebraska. Now, to be fair, Nebraska today is not the Nebraska as far as, it's not your grandpa's Nebraska Cornhuskers as far as that's concerned, right? Like,
definitely not.
So Oregon all time against Nebraska, 2-8. 2-8. There are 2 programs in the Big Ten that they have never played. Do you know who those are?
I'm going to roll out there and say Indiana.
Indiana, they have played 3 times.
Really?
And they are 2-1 against the Hoosiers.
How about Illinois?
Illinois, they have played 3 times. They are 2-1 against Illinois.
Wow, they got a good record versus the Big Dime.
Mm-hmm. they're going to dominate the bottom half of the Big Ten, at least based on what history tells us.
Northwestern.
Northwestern, they've played once, and they are 0-1 against Northwestern.
Wildcats, baby.
Yeah, so there's that. Minnesota, they've played 4 times. They are 1-3.
Okay.
But these two particular programs, they have never beat them, and they've never lost to them, ever. It's kind of wild.
Maryland.
Maryland is 1.
Rutgers.
And Rutgers is the other one.
Had to go to the Big East teams.
Yeah. How about Wisconsin? Oregon against Wisconsin. How many times have they gone head-to-head? And what is that record, do you think?
I'm going to say Oregon leads that series 3-2.
So it's actually a tied series. 3 wins, though, but 3 losses. So they played 6 times. That's an interesting one right there. So we've talked about Iowa. They're 2-1. The Oregon Ducks 2-1 all time against Iowa. 2-6 all time against Nebraska. 2-1 against Illinois. Purdue 3 times, 2-1 against the Boilermakers. Minnesota 1-3. They have yet to play Maryland. They have yet to play Rutgers. 0-1 against Northwestern, as we talked about. The Hoosiers 2-1 in their 3 matchups. And then, again, an even split of the 6 matchups between Oregon and Wisconsin, 3 games apiece. What about the Spartans? What about Michigan State?
Ooh, I would imagine they played them quite a bit. I'm going to say they played them at least 10 times.
So they have played 7 times.
Okay.
And they have a 4-3 advantage over the Michigan State Spartans. And I think the interesting thing, too, to go back and see when the last time all of these schools played.
Right.
Obviously, Oregon and Ohio State have quite the history, especially throughout the college football playoff era, in the national championship game. And then, of course, the regular season matchups. They'll be playing again this upcoming year. So that's pretty wild as well. How about Penn State?
I'm going to say they've played 7 times.
So as far as that head-to-head, 4 times.
Okay.
And Penn State has the advantage 3-1.
Ha, take that.
Oregon 1-3 against Penn State. Now, that cheating program that cheated to win a national championship, that team up north, they've played 5 times. What do you think Oregon's record is against that cheating team up north?
I'm going to say 3-2. No, 2-3. I say they have a losing record to Michigan.
You have officially got one right.
About time.
Is Oregon's record against Michigan as far as that's concerned. Any surprises so far as we run through this
probably the biggest surprise that Northwestern has beat them. When you talk about Michigan and Oregon, the game that comes to mind is the year really Oregon made themselves known to the masses. And when they went to the big house, Dennis Dixon was their quarterback. And they ran the Statue of Liberty play 3 times in a row inside the red zone, and he scored every single time. Dennis Dixon was on his way to winning the Heisman Trophy until he tore up his knee during conference play. Ultimately, Dennis Dixon ended up playing for the Steelers. I think he won a Super Bowl as a backup quarterback. But that was really the first time you saw the spread offense on full display, because everybody expected, Oregon in this spread offense to come to the big house, and Michigan was going to pound them into the ground. But they were throwing the ball all over the lot, misdirection all over the lot. You had Dennis Dixon out there making people look silly. So when you ask me about Michigan and Oregon, that's the game that comes to mind.
If you're just tuning in, we welcome you. It's the Kinner and Kev Show, Dayton's ESPN Radio, 1410 Wing AM. So we're getting to know a little bit about Oregon's history against the Big Ten. Again, one of the newest members of the Big Ten Conference. We took a look at the history of USC against the Big Ten last week, taking a look at Oregon this week, and kind of going through and taking a look at their all-time record against Big Ten opponents, 2-3 against the Michigan Wolverines. All right, the Ohio State Buckeyes, as we talked about, no strangers to one another. Ohio State beat them in the national championship game back in 2014. They obviously split. They lost. That game at Oregon, that big, a few years ago. So what do you think the all-time series record is? So
you just talked about their most recent loss at the Shoe, but they beat them in the national championship game. And then before that, they beat them in the Rose Bowl with Terrell Pryor and who was else on that? Boom Herron and DeVere Posey. I'm going to venture to say that Ohio State has a winning record, and their winning record is 4-2.
So Ohio State has dominated this. That one win at the Shoe a few years ago was Oregon's first win ever against the Buckeyes. Ohio State has a 9-1 advantage over Oregon.
Oh, baby.
Yes. And they'll have a chance to add to that. Ohio State has a chance to pick up their 10th win against the Oregon Ducks program coming up this season. No doubt about it. So there you go. Oregon, how they kind of fare against Big Ten opponents. They've never played Maryland, never played Rutgers. They've only played Northwestern once, and they're 0-1, 2-1 against Purdue, Illinois, and Indiana, as well as Iowa, 1-3 against Penn State, 2-3 against Michigan, 1-9 against the Buckeyes, as we talked about. Now, again, they join UCLA, USC, and Washington coming to the Big Ten. They're 32-39 all-time against UCLA.
Okay.
They are 48-63 all-time against Washington, and they are 23-38 all-time against USC. What is wild is they have been dominated by all three of those programs.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't seem like it, but they don't have a winning record against any of the SEC against any of those Pac-12 teams joining the Big Ten. But the Big Ten is probably the happiest of all those programs to have Oregon coming in from a competition standpoint.
Yeah.
From a financial standpoint, USC, obviously. Yeah. From a competition standpoint, Oregon, I think right now, the Big Ten, they're going to be well represented by, the couple O teams, Ohio State and Oregon this upcoming season, as far as that's concerned. But Oregon seems to be the cream of the crop, if you will, coming in to join the conference.
So three things. I am wearing an Oregon hat today. That is coincidence at its finest. Going back to the Oregon-Michigan game, that game took place in 2007. And just looking at this box score, Oregon won 39-7. 39-7. Michigan didn't score after the first quarter. And some of these stats, I talked about Dennis Dixon. He was up for, Heisman contention that season. In that game, he finished 16-25, 292 yards, 3 passing TDs, an additional 76 rushing yards with another rushing touchdown on the ground. And then this goes to Shaw's point, because I know he's listening. I'm like the big Chad Henne guy saying he was the best quarterback to ever come out of Michigan. Well, he did not have a good game against the Oregon Ducks. 12 of 23, 172 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Mike Hart got busy, though, ran for 127 yards, no touchdowns. But, I just think about that Oregon game, like that was the one that really put them on the map. And my expectations for Oregon this year are a lot lower than other people out there. For them coming to the Big Ten this year, I don't think it's necessarily about like, oh, man, you guys are coming from the West Coast, the Pac-12, you coming to the mean streets of the Big Ten. I just think the travel is going to get them one game. Mm-hmm. And it's going to be a game that nobody's thinking about. I'm just trying to look at this schedule. So
that was the next part of this.
Okay, go for it.
No, continue. That's what I was about to get into. I was like, this schedule, I think it's a cakewalk, but you're saying there's a potential fall along the way, and I'll let you continue from there. But so that's it. So I look at this again. Only the Idaho Vandals, cool. Idaho, Boise State, Oregon State. That's their non-conference, and then what? The Big Ten is where it picks up from there. At their very first Big Ten matchup, UCLA.
A place they've been.
Love that. But so you're looking at this schedule. You think it's going to be a road matchup that they stumble
upon. Like obviously you talked about the first 4 games. That's obviously, I think, something they're going to be able to handle. They're going to be playing against one of their biggest rivals in Oregon State, another former conference opponent from the Pac-12, and UCLA, now a conference opponent from the Big Ten. They got Michigan State at home. They got the Buckeyes at home. Then they traveled to Purdue. Finally, we hit the road. We're out there. We'll fly all the way to the Midwest. Not a big problem. We handle business. Then they fly back home to take on Illinois. But then they travel to the Big House. Now, that game is going to take place in November. There's no telling who the quarterback is going to be for Michigan. They might be out there with the orgy kid running the old Tebow set. Like, hey, man, we're just going to go out here in the wing tee and just pound and ground. But, like, that's not the game that's going to get it for me. I think the game that's going to jump up and bite them is going to be the Wisconsin game, late November, where you've been traveling back and forth, because you go home Illinois, Michigan, home Maryland, all the way to Wisconsin again. I think that's the game that they get bit in the butt where, like, they falter and they take a L. And obviously, everybody knows me. I'm a homer. I'm, of course, going to pick the Buckeyes to beat them at their place. So I think that gives them 2 losses in conference minimum.
Yeah, so again, that Ohio State matchup, October 12th, we talked about all those big-time matchups on October 12th. As far as that's concerned, we know that it will not be a big noon kickoff, so that Ohio State-Oregon game will probably be either a 3:30 kick on CBS. My mind went towards the ESPN night game right off the bat because I'm used to the old network contracts. But, yeah, with CBS, that's probably going to be their 3:30 kickoff as far as that's concerned. But they're at Purdue. Purdue's had Ohio State's number at night at times, as far as there, but and that's a night game. Oregon at Purdue is a night game. So just that's one I look at and I'm like, I'm not going to pick Purdue to beat Oregon, but I've watched a very good Ohio State team go, obviously, into West Lafayette and get take one in the chin.
And to your point, the crowd is going to do their part. They're going to do their part. Like every road environment that Oregon shows up for, or USC for that matter, shows up for, the home crowd in the Big Ten country, they're going to bring their A game. And we all know, like in the college game, the crowd actually does matter. In the pro game, it's like kind of hit or miss or whatever. But in the college game, the crowd has an impact on the games. So, like, I think you're right. I think that's going to affect them, especially you talk about a night game, a couple adult beverages, people really into it. I mean, the crowd's going to be rocking. Like, that can affect the team. And especially in an environment you never played in before. Like, Oregon traveling to USC at a night game. They've played there before. They've coached there before. They know the ins and outs. They know what hotel. They got all these things down pat. These are all new experiences for the Oregon Ducks and USC. I'm expecting them. A lot of people are picking Oregon not only to win the Big Ten, but play in the Big Ten championship game. As of right now, on the second day of the month, I don't think they're going to be playing in the Big Ten championship game.
And this is a different Big Ten format. Divisions, it's the best two records. But they very well could be though.
Oh yeah, they could,
because
on paper, absolutely.
It could be a potential rematch, Ohio State Oregon Big Ten championship game, which would be wild. But nonetheless, so the upset alert game for highly ranked Oregon when those rankings do come out. You're picking the Wisconsin game. I do like that upset pick because of the fact Luke Fickell. That's not an early season game. That's late in the season. That is at Wisconsin on November 16th.
It's cold outside.
So you're at Michigan on November 2nd. That's my birthday, by the way.
Hey,
November 2nd, you're at Michigan. Then you have Maryland at home. First matchup ever between those two programs. And then on the road at Wisconsin on November 16th. That could be a tough one right there. Again, Camp Randall. We'll see if that's a night game. I mean, I would anticipate that could be in the running for that, or that could be a big noon kickoff. You never know. But I'm picking the upset alert game for them to be that Purdue game because they play Ohio State October 12th at home. So let's say they beat Ohio State or they lose to Ohio State. It's an emotionally charged big-time matchup, possibly on CBS 3:30 kick or under the lights. And then to gear up for Ohio State and either beat Ohio State and have all that emotional charge for that game and then to hit the road to take on Purdue. On the road, but it's at night under the lights, and Purdue will be playing it more. If it's Oregon at Purdue, a noon kick, it's Oregon all day. But because it's under the lights on October 18th, I'm not Charles Barkley guaranteeing anything, but that is that upset alert game and matchup right there. So
we can talk college football all day on this show, especially like leading into the season. I will say this about Michigan: if you are a Michigan season ticket holder and you paid for last year's home schedule, you're getting your money's worth this year. This is the season to have Michigan season tickets. I mean, look at these home games they have. They got Texas coming to town. They got Oregon coming to town. They got USC coming to town. Like, that's a home slate. Like, that rubbish that they played last year at home, it got themselves a national championship. It's all good. Not trying to roast or anything like that. But, like, if I was a Michigan fan, I would be like, these home games ain't so great. Like, they had two good games last season, both of them on the road, obviously at Penn State and Ohio State, won them all, national champions. It was all worth it. But like this year, you got your work cut out for you. But like you talked about, you want to have those butterflies in your stomach going into games. You don't know who's going to win. That's what makes the game so exciting. So they got Texas second week of the season. Then they got USC and they got Oregon all at home. I'm sure all the mom and pop restaurants in Ann Arbor are licking their chops. All the small hotels out there charging rates 10 times the price. Like, it's about to be a money-making situation in Ann Arbor this season.
Kinner Kev Show, Dayton's ESPN Radio, 1410 Wing AM. A lot of big games in Ann Arbor. but they don't have squat on the Akron Zips, the Western Michigan Broncos, a bye week in week 3, followed by Marshall, the Thundering Herd, at Michigan State, Iowa, and then the season kicks off October 12th against Oregon. But Ohio State deserves a light month and a half into the season.
Go Bucks.
So there's that. All right, Donovan Mitchell finally signs that contract extension with the Cleveland Cavaliers. The details of the contract coming up. Had a chance to catch up with Jay Morrison, Pro Football Network Bengals reporter, on Off the Bench earlier today. We'll have that conversation coming up for you in a bit. But there was one particular talking point in there that I did not even think about. It's the NFL against the Sunday Ticket lawsuit, right? But when we talk about the NFL losing that lawsuit, the Bengals are considered the NFL, the Cowboys, the Browns, your Steelers, everybody. The Bengals might owe a humongous dollar amount as a result of this lawsuit, and that can impact them big time. That's one thing I talked about with Jay. He said, hey, this team, they gave the naming rights to their stadium. They did a lot to prepare to pay Joe Burrow. They don't really have a whole lot of wiggle room to deal with other expenses like this. This could impact the Bengals bigly. So we'll have that conversation coming up around the corner, Donovan Mitchell. But with this, talking about the Oregon and the potential upsets throughout the Big Ten slate or just the season slate in general, we previewed what USC would look like against the Big Ten. Let's take a look at their upset alert schedule. What is USC? What matchup? At what point in their Big Ten schedule could we see them potentially getting tripped up? We have that coming up for you, as well as Donovan Mitchell conversation. Kinner and Kev, Dayton's ESPN Radio, 1410 Wing AM. we are back. Justin Kinner, Kev Nash, Dayton's ESPN Radio, 1410, Wing AM. We opened up the show, of course, taking a deep look into the history of Oregon against Big Ten opponents. Then we'll take a look at the Oregon schedule this upcoming college football season and kind of dissected where some pitfalls could potentially pop up for them. Our upset alert games for Oregon, of course, that late season matchup in November against Wisconsin, Luke Fickell's Wisconsin Badgers, of course. That seemed like forever ago. Like we'll see, like he could turn them around this upcoming season. It'll be pretty wild. But with that being said, so it's one of those things where you take a look at it. I picked the potential upset for Oregon coming late in the season, or in the midseason. I'm sorry, coming off of that. So they play on October 12th. Oregon, Ohio State play, and then a week later they play at Purdue under the lights, and that could be a potential upset. Now it's Purdue. I see people saying, why would you pick Purdue to beat Oregon? That's why it's called an upset. If I say I pick Ohio State to beat Oregon, that's just picking one of the heavyweight fighters going up against, you know what I mean? Like, yeah. It's an upset. Wisconsin beating Oregon, that would be an upset, right? And I don't put Wisconsin and Purdue in that same boat, but it would still be an upset. Right. Who knows? Maybe by that point of the season, maybe Wisconsin's a top 15 team, and still technically by rankings, still maybe an upset, but it'll be interesting as far as that's concerned. But what about USC? Because I look at USC's schedule, and this is one thing that I find fascinating is, okay, they open up the season on September 1st, okay, and they open up at Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas in a neutral site game. That's a night game, 7:30 kickoff in the Vegas Kickoff Classic, taking on the LSU Tigers. Now, this is Tigers. They try to get out of this. Yeah. This is the game that, Lincoln Riley and USC tried to get out of. We had Dave Biddle on the program not too long ago. We talked about this very scenario where in a 12-team college football playoff, back then, in the 14 playoff back then, as in last year, 2 losses, you're out. That magic number seems to be just moved up a game, or a game added at 3 games. You lose 3 games, you're probably not making the playoff. You could probably lose 2 and be okay, depending on how you lose and who you lose to, as far as that's concerned. But now with these loaded conferences, with USC and Oregon joining a conference with Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan, Wisconsin, who could be turning it around with Luke Fickell, now you don't need to test yourself in the non-con. The chances of you slipping up in conference play, it increases dramatically. And you don't need to present bigger challenges for yourself in the non-conference. That's why he wanted to get out of that LSU matchup. He was unsuccessful in doing so, Kev. He did get out of the Ole Miss game. Right. And I don't even know if that was for this. I think that was for next season. Yeah. So, but either way, too soon. It's too late to get out of this one. They open up with LSU. That's a coin flip game right there for me to kick off the season. I think LSU is going to be favored. Don't get me wrong. But at the same time, as far as potential upsets on the season, it's easy to pick upsets for Oregon because they're going to be so damn good. How good do you anticipate USC being this upcoming season?
I don't see this big fall off from USC, especially offensively. I mean, I know they've made a change in defensive coordinator. They've actually made a couple splashes in the transfer portal with some guys on the defensive line. But, they're expecting like, oh, man, you guys don't have Caleb Williams anymore, so now your offense is going to be kaput. Well, Lincoln Riley does have a plug-and-play type of situation. I mean, we can talk about Baker, we can talk about Kyler, we can talk about Hurts, we can talk about Caleb, like the boom, 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 boom. The hits just keep on hitting. Like, so whoever the starting quarterback is for USC, I'm expecting big things from. Kind of a la how you talked about last year, whoever's the starting quarterback for Ohio State, I'm expecting big things from because of the track record of the head coach. So if there is a fall off from the quarterback at USC, that's going to fall on the head coach, just like it did for Coach Day at Ohio State. But I don't see that. I'm looking at this schedule, and I mean, I know LSU is the big bad LSU, but last year's LSU's defense was just as bad, if not worse, than USC's defense. So if we're expecting USC's defense to be bad again, why would we expect the same thing from LSU? I'm not expecting them to win that game because I think that LSU has more offensive firepower to start off the season, but I'm just looking at the schedule. Where's the team that's going to get them? I don't see the team that's going to get them that we're not expecting them to get got by. Like, I think we can, it's a coin flip LSU game, traveling to Michigan. Michigan has a lot of guys that are now in the NFL playing pro ball. They have a lot of returning defensive guys, but hey, I think USC can give them a run for their money. I still probably would pick Michigan in that game. It's a 3:30 game on CBS. The big house is going to be rocking for that one. But like, we've all seen Purdue in big time matchups. We've seen Penn State when they go up against these matchups. They play Washington every single year. And guess what? Kalen DeBoer is not coaching at Washington anymore. Michael Penix Jr. is in the NFL. Roma Duzier in the NFL. They're offensive linemen in the NFL. So, like, it's not going to be that game. So, if there is one, you're forcing me to pick one game, I'm going to pick the Rutgers. But it's not, you know what? Can't even pick the Rutgers because Rutgers is at USC. So, I'm not picking that one. If it's one on here that I'm twisting my arm, it would be Nebraska. It would be Nebraska.
That's your upset.
That would be my upset.
Where do you anticipate their first Big Ten loss coming?
First Big Ten loss, it would be at Michigan.
So that USC at Michigan.
They'll start the season out 0-1 in conference play.
So, and again, that'll be coming out, and that could be the month of September could be a brutal. It could either be an exciting one for USC, a nice. It could be a big month for the Big Ten because if USC can knock off LSU in week 1, they'll take care of business against Utah State, you'd like to think, right?
Right.
So a potential 2-0 start heading into a week 3 bye week. If they do beat Michigan at Michigan, that's a 3-0 start with wins against LSU and Michigan. And now all of a sudden the Big Ten has Ohio State. They have Oregon. They have obviously now USC in that picture, even though Oregon and Ohio State, and I think that'll come down to a final play. And a loss hurts, but I don't think it takes either. The Buckeyes, or I'm sorry, the Big Ten, they will have playoff. They'll have playoff options, if you will. Yeah. I don't think it's going to just be Ohio State or just be Oregon. I do think that there will be multiple teams in the playoff representing the Big Ten. Will USC be one of those? That's tough. We talked about the LSU game to start the season, but how about the fact that they end the regular season against Notre Dame, against Notre Dame in Los Angeles? Like, that's weird to me, seeing a Big Ten schedule ending the regular season with a non-conference game, but that's a wild Saturday, November 30th. You have Ohio State, Michigan. You have Notre Dame at USC. If Notre Dame wasn't a bunch of cowards, that would be a Big Ten matchup as well. So, it is what it is. But that is interesting, watching USC play Notre Dame in the final week of the regular season in their first year in the Big Ten.
I think the most interesting thing that I saw on their schedule is there's 11 o'clock kickoffs in the Big Ten.
11 p.m. Eastern against Rutgers.
Yeah.
What are the other ones?
There's a week 2 versus Utah State, 11 p.m. on the Big Ten Network, and then 11 p.m. on Fox Rutgers. So, it's just amazing. I love college football. I stay up way too late watching college football, but now you're telling me I'm going to be watching USC at 11 o'clock at night take on a conference opponent constantly. I'm tapped in. I'm locked in.
Let me ask you. Oh, so you like that?
I love it.
Oh, see, I feel like some people will not like that, but I am curious people's thoughts on that, because what's worse? So you like it. I hate that 11 o'clock kickoff. But what Buckeye fans get furious at the idea of playing a game on Friday night.
Mm-hmm.
But what's worse, having to play USC at 11 p.m. or on a Saturday night or a Friday night kickoff? I'll pick the Friday night kickoff over the 11 p.m. kickoff on a Saturday night, but it would be my definition of a primetime game under the lights.
Yeah, under the lights, man.
As far as that,
it's only 8 p.m. out there in Cali.
Nonetheless. All right, good stuff. But yeah, no potential upset games for them. Again, they're not. I don't think they're going to be good enough to be looked at as trap games on the schedule as big time upsets. Oregon's going to be a top 5 team. Ohio State's going to be a top 5 team. So we look at real upsets for them. I think USC is just so vulnerable because of how bad they are defensively that it's hard to look at any of these teams beating them and saying, yeah, no one saw that coming. They're vulnerable defensively. That puts them in position to lose to anybody on this schedule, even though they shouldn't. But that's the nature of it when you don't prioritize defense. So we'll see. All right, it's a Kinner and Kev Show, Dayton's ESPN Radio, 1410 Wing AM. Let's talk a little NBA. Donovan Mitchell finally signs the extension with the Cleveland Cavaliers. The information, the details about the contract, though, we'll be right back here doing the same song and dance here in the very near future. It wasn't a long extension, but he did sign the extension, and the Cavs playoff/championship hopes get extended by a few more years. We'll talk about that when we come back. How big of a deal was this for the Cleveland Cavaliers? I think it was a huge deal. We'll talk about that when we come back.
Donovan Mitchell has played his last game for the Cleveland Cavaliers.
But it seems like no one around the league actually thinks he wants to stay in Cleveland.
Donovan Mitchell's going to say, damn it, I want out. You know why? Because I wanted to be in New York anyway, okay?
That nobody thinks he's staying there, and I think that's what we've heard. I haven't heard anybody be like, no, you guys are wrong. He's staying.
Hey, it's the worst kept secret. People don't think that Donovan Mitchell's going to be there long-term anyway.
Even if Donovan Mitchell and the Cavs win a championship next year, that'd be great. Loved it. It's even more likely that he's going to leave.
It's true.
I think
Not
there's no
this
chance
year.
he signs. I don't think there's any chance he signs the extension there ever. And if it was up to me, I would trade Donovan Mitchell.
Well, it finally happened. Donovan Mitchell officially signs 3-year contract extension with the Cleveland Cavaliers. Player opt out for the 2020 after the 2026 season. So we get 2 years of just Cavalier basketball built behind Donovan Mitchell. And then after that, we can do exactly all the same talking points in this past year again in 2027. But, people now nitpicking, well, it's only the 3-year deal. It's actually smart, good business. You do the 3-year deal. By that point, you'll be 10 years in the league, and then there's like another exemption. So you enter a new tier of getting even paid more to where the Cavs could pay him that number, or they move on and he moves on and what have you. But this was, and me and you have talked about this for a few weeks, where I've said, hey, if Donovan Mitchell does re-up with the Cleveland Cavaliers, okay, because he got traded to Cleveland. He had no trade clause, so he couldn't veto this. Now, he could have done what some athletes do and throw their weight around and threaten to not play and that. But, he played, and he should have. It was a good Cavs roster. They made the playoffs the last 2 years. It's not as if this team was horrible. They had their deficiencies, no doubt. But the bottom line is I said that, if he chooses to stay with Cleveland, that is the biggest win in the last 24 years for the Cleveland Cavaliers, at least in my lifetime, because at the end of the day, he got traded to the Cavaliers. He didn't pick to go there. And now that he had a chance to just upright and leave, to go to New York, to go to Los Angeles, to go play for maybe a Golden State Warrior team with Steph Curry, he chose to stay in Cleveland. Yes, he gets paid more by them than anybody else, but the bottom line is he wouldn't have been hurting for money. He would be competing for championships elsewhere. This is a big win for Cleveland. This is the first time in a long time that a superstar has chose to play for the Cleveland Cavaliers that wasn't coming to play with LeBron or is not winning because of LeBron. This is Donovan Mitchell's franchise now. I think this is a huge deal. I don't care that it was only for a 2 or 3 year deal. The fact that he chose to stay in Cleveland when he could have gone elsewhere, I think is big time. Good for the Cleveland Cavaliers. Cleveland sports, they get knocked around all the time.
Mm-hmm.
This was a win for the Cavs. Took a little longer, maybe a little uncomfortable. The longer it went, I was like, what's going on? But they get the deal done. Donovan Mitchell, the Cleveland Cavaliers, is going to be a fun playoff team for the next couple of years. Now they need to start finding ways to make moves to put them in that championship contention window to compete with the likes of the New York Knicks, the Boston Celtics, and yes, after getting Paul George, the Philadelphia 76ers.
This is a great deal for the Cavs. It's a great deal for Donovan Mitchell. You touched on it. I mean, it's a 3-year deal. Donovan Mitchell is 27 years old right now. Once this deal is up, he'll be 30. He'll be able to re-up for that contract, and this next contract will put him almost at $400 million for the length of that contract. So it's an obvious move. And then when you do the backstory on Donovan Mitchell, him as a person, and knowing that his dad works in the front office for the Mets for over 20 years, you thought he was going to let his son do a bad deal? Like, come on, man. Like, all these things line up, all these dominoes line up for him making the best business decision for himself and giving himself the most flexibility to maximize his earning potential. So it's kudos to Donovan Mitchell and his agent. And then obviously shouts out to the Cavs for getting this deal done. I mean, a lot has been made about the Paul George and, everything that the Knicks are doing. And obviously what the Celtics have done by bringing back their entire starting five and, paying them a lot of money. They're the champions. They deserve it. But I don't think enough is being said about what the Cavs are doing, because they haven't made any moves. They see everybody else making moves. But I think the biggest move that the Cleveland Cavaliers have made was getting Kenny Atkinson as their head coach. People want the Cavs oh, man, go get this player, go get this player, or get that player, or get that player. What was the biggest addition to your Cleveland Browns this past season?
Well, they get the new, they took care of business. Yeah, they replaced some pieces, but the play calling, as far as figuring that out with the offensive coordinator.
That's my thing.
But 2 years, really, I don't like any big move they made this year. But getting Jim Schwartz the previous offseason, that was like that big domino that, okay, they had all the pieces. They just needed that one guy to come in to bring it all together, and boom, it took off. And that could be Atkinson here for the Cavs.
And that's my point. I mean, Atkinson, you look at the best years from Karis LeVert. You look at the best years from D'Angelo Russell. You look at, he was a part of the Golden State championship team. He was on that coaching staff when they beat the Celtics a couple years ago. So it's his job to make this offense work better. It's his job to make the shots easier for Donovan. It's his job to make sure that Donovan and Darius Garland can play together, because people automatically say, well, go ahead and trade Darius Garland now. Like, no, let's wait until the trade deadline. At least let's give it an opportunity with the new head coach and his offensive scheme, because like that's what he's known for. He's known for offense. I mean, I know a lot of the brunt of NBA basketball is like, what does this star player do? What does he do? Just let him do it. Well, coaches do have a lot to say so about that. There's no mystery about like, oh man, the Knicks and Jalen Brunson, he's just playing at a crazy level. Well, when you're under Tibbs, the point guard, here's the ball, do you. We're going to give you the keys. As long as you play defense, I'm going to give you the keys. We can run as many high pick and rolls as you want. See what happened with Derrick Rose. See what happened when he was coaching Jimmy Butler with Minnesota. It was, hey, here's the ball, Jimmy. You go beat Jimmy, and you make all the plays. You make all the decisions. I want to see what Kenny Atkinson can do with this Cleveland Cavaliers roster as presently constructed.
Yeah, and keep in mind, too, D'Angelo Russell was an NBA All-Star under Atkinson.
Yep.
So keep that in mind as far as what he could do with guards. I'm not a fan of the idea of keeping Garland.
Okay.
Because he's not happy to be there, but maybe a change in scenery, not scenery, but a change in head coach and philosophy and approach, just a new plan heading into the season can kind of give him a little bit of breath of fresh air to maybe, buy in, even say, okay, I can give it a half. I can give it the up until the trade deadline, as you talked about. And by that point, we'll know, if things are going well, I highly doubt he's trying to force his way out mid-season.
Right.
Okay. But if things aren't going well, it would make all the sense in the world to use. I think it's a good bargaining chip. That's a good ace in the hole, if you will. That's just a good, plan B in your back pocket heading into the season. If we go into the season and things are going well, then we're glad we kept him. But if we go into the season and things aren't going well, we now have a piece that we can reevaluate. Because right now the landscape's not very good. You're not going to get a lot back for him.
Right.
You're not going to maximize his value. You may get something back, but you could probably get something better come the deadline. There will be a team that has some big wing defender guards that need that point guard to run the ship. You think that the Phoenix Suns, they were desperate need of a point guard, that if it comes down to it and they need a Darius Garland and that's their missing piece to come out of the West, you think they're not going to give up a lot to get that done? That's the thing for the Cavs. So I'm with you there. I don't like the idea of keeping someone who's disgruntled, but he may not be disgruntled now because, hey, we're all moving in the right direction.
Right.
We got a new head coach, and just because I'm not being traded now doesn't mean I won't be traded and find a new spot. Let's just go see what we can do. But yeah, I think waiting and seeing what's out there is the right approach because of the recent changes. But good for the Cavs for getting this deal done, because these are good problems to have. Oh, we have too many good guards in the back. Oh man, what do we do? These are good problems to have because man, it's been a roller coaster since 2003. What was LeBron's rookie year? 2003.
2003. Yeah.
So from 2003 to now, it has been 2 decades of LeBron, even in the years he's not here.
Right.
He's no longer here. He may retire a Cav, sign a one-day contract or whatever, or might come. Who knows? But the bottom line is this is Donovan Mitchell's franchise now. And I think that was pretty evident. They were following him around like a puppy dog over the weekend, going to his camp. He was probably saying unfunny jokes that they just found hilarious. I mean, they were doing everything they could. And the other thing, I was mad because they hadn't made any moves. But that front office is probably like, we don't give a blank about anything else right now, because we can go get a great shooter. We can go get a nice big. We can go do this. But it all means nothing if we don't have this staple player. So I think now if we go another week and they haven't done anything of significance, I'll be a little critical while still being happy they got this done. But ultimately, good for them, because you heard at the beginning, all those people, those had us kind of down on the Cavs. Like, all right, well, they tried, it didn't work, off you go. I'm glad that he re-signed as far as that's concerned. Donovan Mitchell, all-time ranks amongst Cleveland Cavalier players. He's first in points per game, first in three-pointers made, first in 60-point games, and second in 40-point games behind LeBron James, of course, and he's fourth in 30-point games as far as that's concerned. So, he's been around, 2 seasons?
Yeah.
And he's already put a stamp on that franchise, which is wild. So
absolutely.
We'll see.
And speaking to like the talking heads, and there's a lot of credible guys on that sound bite that you dropped, from, the Ryan Russillos to the Bill Simmons to, the guys that are working on ESPN, the behind the scenes guys. Like, not saying like I believe in conspiracy theories, but this is what conspiracy people and fans say when they don't want him to play for the Cavs. They don't want him playing in a smaller market, because you get all those talking heads saying the exact same thing. And then ultimately Donovan Mitchell has been saying, I'm happy here. This is where I want to be the entire season. And then ultimately doubles down on that and signs the contract. So like, where's this information come from? And this is like this part of the stuff where people say, well, they're just making it up because they're trying to force him to New York. I mean, we all know that Stephen A wants him in New York, and Stephen A doesn't show any hesitation in that, saying, hey, yeah, I'm biased. I want my New York Knicks to get him. Like, that's fine. Yeah, the orange and blue skies. Like, he isn't hesitating on that. But like the other people out there, like the one clip of the guy saying, even if they won the NBA finals, he's not coming back. Or I would trade Donovan Mitchell today because, I mean, I don't see him ever signing a contract. So now that he's signed this contract, now what? Now what are you going to say about Donovan Mitchell and not wanting to be in Cleveland?
But we'll keep an eye on more NBA free agent stuff throughout the week. I know a short week due to the 4th of July and everything going on.
What you got planned, man?
Nothing, to be honest.
Huh?
Nothing yet. Been on the go, been a little busy.
Yeah.
Doing a lot of multiple full-time stuff. So, just trying to balance it all. But we are Dayton's radio home for Cincinnati Reds baseball, and the Cincinnati Reds will be in action coming up here later on tonight, Kev. They had an off night last night, game 1 between the Reds and the Yankees. Reds at New York. They're in, speaking of New York.
Go New York.
Go New York, go New York, go. But so the Reds and I almost said the Knicks. The Reds and the Yankees coming up 7:05 first pitch tonight with Graham Ashcraft on the mound. Again, said this before. They just played the Red Sox last week. I love the new rule change in baseball. This is my absolute favorite. The fact that the Reds play the Yankees every year is badass. It's very, very cool, okay, for the Reds to go, for the Yankees to come to Great American Ballpark every other year. But I think it's a big opportunity. That, like, where the game grows is situations like this. The Reds going to New York. This is where the game grows, okay? And what I mean by that is we look forward to the Yankees coming here because then we can go see Aaron Judge.
Right.
We see Aaron Judge no matter what, right? Like, we're going to – but Ellie De La Cruz, how many people in New York are paying attention to Ellie De La Cruz? Well, now they'll definitely pay attention to Ellie De La Cruz every season because those Yankee fans that tune in to listen or just watch their team, they're going to come across Ellie De La Cruz every year now. So now Ellie becomes a star across all of baseball instead of just the same National League opponents every single year. That's what I love about this rule change. I don't want Ellie to go to New York or Los Angeles, or whatever. But I think this is where baseball is going to grow the most because, like I said, we look at it as a chance for us small markets to see the big teams.
Right.
Well, those big teams, they're playing the same teams every year as well, not playing the Reds. Now they see Ellie every year. Now they're going to see McClain, and hopefully we see McClain. My God, he ain't played all year, but you know what I mean. I think this is great. This is my favorite rule change for baseball. Everybody playing everybody, and this is pretty cool.
It just makes the most sense.
Yep.
It isn't the 1970s or 80s where, they're flying commercial, they're chartering flights all over the place. They absolutely should be playing everybody.
Scott Campbell says Griffey Jr. received his last payment today.
Oh!
5th highest paid Reds player this season. And he's giving you as much production as a lot of the current Reds players like Matt McClain and Christian Encarnacion Strand and a lot of those guys.
Should have got Bobby Bonilla's agent.
All right, so earlier today had a chance to catch up with ESPN's Mark Adams, the Dick Vitale of mid-major basketball, as I like to call him. But so we got to talk about a lot of things about, of course, right now the future, basically the conflict of your collectives and your athletic departments. He's a former Division I basketball coach. How would he handle dealing with the tug of war between the collectives and athletic departments, the ongoing changes in college athletics, of course, the future of the NCAA tournament, Kev? He believes that it's very, very soon that we're going to see an expanded NCAA tournament. He's not a fan of it, but he believes it's coming. Very good conversation with him. Also in hour 2, our conversation with Jay Morrison, Bengals reporter for Pro Football Network. All of that coming up. It's the Kinner and Kev Show. Dayton's ESPN Radio, 1410 Wing AM.